Shalom and welcome to another episode of Hasten a Day. My name is Elder Rhymelop and my reader today is
Elder Sakaron.
And today what we're going to be discussing is we're going to go into the breakdown of the book of Romans, the 11th chapter. We're going to deal with the olive tree and the wild olive tree. And the reason why we're going to deal with this topic is because you have a lot of so-called Christians out there and so-called people in the church and different, Baptists, whatever they call themselves, Catholics, morons, whatever they call themselves out there, that try to use the book of Romans 11th chapter to try to tie in the whole world and all the other heathens of the world into the scriptures. And we're going to show you today, we're going to go into the full breakdown of the book of Romans 11th chapter to show you that that's not true, and that the book of Romans 11th chapter is talking about the Israelites or the Jews that were in Israel, that were keeping the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High, and the Israelite foreigners, that had gone off away from the Most High. Alright, so the first scripture we want to start off with is the book of Romans, the first chapter and the 28th verse. And before Elder Sakaron starts reading it, I want to pull it up on screen so you brothers can read along. Alright, so go ahead.
The book of Romans chapter 1 verse 28. And even as they did not like to retain the Most High in their knowledge.
This is talking about the Israelites, the ones that went off, the Israelite foreigners. So it says, and even as they did not like to retain the Most High in their knowledge. Go ahead.
The Most High gave them over to a reprobate mind.
The Most High gave them over to a reprobate mind, meaning a mind void of judgment, because the Lord gave his laws, statutes, and commandments to follow after, which the scriptures say that if a man do, he shall even live in them. So what happened was, once the Israelites started going off and started worshiping idols, the Most High took that knowledge away from them and gave them a reprobate mind, meaning a mind that was void of judgment, that could not think upon the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High. Go ahead.
To do those things which are not convenient.
To do those things which are not convenient. Which part of those things that were not convenient was worshiping idols and doing other things, faggotry and lesbianism and bestiality and all the other things that the other nation were doing, eating unclean foods. That all led up to that. Alright, so now let's go from there to the book of Romans, the 2nd chapter, and the 25th verse. You can read that.
The book of Romans chapter 2 verse 25. For circumcision verily profiteth.
Right, circumcision is talking about the Jews. Alright, in Jerusalem and Palestine, in that area. That was the circumcision. So it says, for circumcision verily profiteth. Go ahead.
If thou keep the law.
Right, because the reason why they were known as a circumcision was because they were keeping the law, as it tells you in the book of Romans, the 4th chapter. What advantage then hath the Jew, or what profit is there of circumcision? Much every way, chiefly because that unto them were committed the oracles of the Most High. So for circumcision verily profited, it does profit, because the Most High gave it as a profiting thing, if thou keep the law. Go ahead.
But if thou be a breaker of the law.
But if you break the law, which certain Israelites did, go ahead.
Thy circumcision is made uncircumcision.
So you being called the Israelite, a Jew, or from your respective tribe, was going to be made null and void, so to speak, because you were going to go from being called the Israelite to being called a heathen or a Gentile, because your circumcision, which was given to you through the law, was going to be made uncircumcision, meaning you were going to go from being either a Jew or from the tribe of Benjamin, or from the tribe of Levi, or from the tribe of Ephraim, or from the tribe of Simeon, or any of the other tribes, to being an outcast. Alright? So let's go from there, because there's a lot of more points in here, but we're just going to hit the fine points, as the Elder Tahar says, and we're going to keep moving on. So go from there to the book of Habakkuk, the 1st chapter, because what happened was, when the Lord gave us his laws, statutes, and commandments, one of the main things that he told us, one of the main admonitions or corrections that he gave us, was he said, look, make sure that when you go into these lands that I give you, which was the land of Canaan at the time, where the Canaanites lived. He said, make sure that you do not do after the manner of those nations, because the things that those nations were doing was the things that caused them to be kicked out of that land. Even though it was prophecy, because the Lord told Abraham that the Amorites and the Perizzites and all them different ites among the Canaanites were going to be kicked out of their land, because that land was already promised to us from the beginning. But the actions that they undertook, even though the Lord made them go off, those actions that they undertook by worshiping idols and committing bestiality and burning their children onto Molech and so on and so forth, that's what caused them to be kicked out of their land. So the Lord said, make sure that you don't do that, because if you do that, then that land is going to spit you out, just like it spit those nations out. Go ahead, brother.
I just got one precept before we go to Habakkuk.
No problem. Hold on. Let me pull up another. Where you at?
I want to go to the book of St. James, the 2nd chapter, and starting at the 8th verse.
Okay, St. James chapter 2 verse 8. Go ahead, bring it out, brother.
All right. It says, if ye fulfill the royal law according to the scripture, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, ye do well. But if ye have respect to persons, ye commit sin, and are convinced of the law as transgressors.
Right, and are convinced of the law as transgressors, because you're going off. Go ahead.
For whosoever shall keep the whole law,
so whosoever shall keep the whole law, go ahead,
and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all.
So if you call yourself keeping the law and then go off on one point of the law, then you're guilty of breaking the whole law.
Right.
That's why we can't keep the law perfect. That's what happened. The Lord gave us a law, but we as a people, we couldn't keep that law. But it was all prophesied. It was all set up that way for us to fall, so that the Lord could bring us back up, back into this thing. All right. So now,
I'm sorry. No, the reason why I brought that up, because in Romans it says, if the circumcision become the uncircumcision point,
right?
Because that's what happened. Because pretty much, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, they knew of the other tribes. They knew of the other tribes living in different areas outside of Jerusalem, and outside of Israel. They knew that they were Israel, but they were like, well, they're going off, and we are much more better than them, right, because we worship the Lord. But truly, they were not worshiping the Lord. They were worshiping Esau.
Right.
And they were worshiping the Romans.
Right.
Because there's a certain in one scripture it says that they were leery of going against Yahweh Shai, because they were afraid of losing their position, that the